Hey, what's happening, everybody? Yes, it is. It is me, Robert Phoenix. I'm back once again. Good morning. It is the 21st of January, and it's a Tuesday. And for me, it's the first day of the week in a lot of ways. Although I did work yesterday. Normally, I don't try not to do much on. We have here speaker test mic. Yeah, I think we're good right now. We don't want the webcam. We want the built-in. Yeah, there we go. I think we'll do this. We'll go this level of audio. Yes, I like that. All right, so I've got the webcam. Oh, well, went away from the webcam. I like the webcam better. Let me go back and try that again. Pardon me. Pardon. Video. Let's see. FaceTime. Well, I guess it's going to be FaceTime today. It's either one or the other now, isn't it? So anyway, we're back on the case. We are back on the case. Let's see who's in the chat room today. Let's see who we got. Let's see. We've got Jennifer and Judy and Natasha. What's going on? There's Charles. Your 49ers. Yes, my 49ers. And there's Anka Glenn and Shari and Maury. Hey, Maury, good to see you. Carrie Rose, Beth Berry. All right. Yes, it was a good football weekend. If you're a 49er fan, if you are a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I felt like the officiating in the Chiefs game was a little bit dubious. I thought there were some calls. There was a pass interference call that I thought could have gone in a different direction, and not against Tennessee. That's the thing with the NFL. It is not a paragon. Sorry. We're almost out of Cedar Fever land, which I'm looking forward to. Anyway, the NFL not always a paragon of officiating and fairness, which I've attempted to show a number of different times, but seems like the Chiefs were kind of red carpeted into the Super Bowl in some way. Now the 49ers, they're just a pretty dominant team, but I think it's gonna be very hard for them to beat the Chiefs. And we've got the Super Bowl coming up on 2/2/2020, and then yesterday, of course, was 2020, right? 2020, and then I guess that last night at 8:20, which is what 20 military time, right? It was like 2020, all that stuff. So we had we had the military time 20. We had 20 seconds. So 20 to the 20th hour, the 20th minute, the 20th second on the 20th day of the 2020th year. It was one of those days yesterday. Momentous time. The beginning of the new age. So if you look at the title of today's show, which is did the new age begin at a gun rights rally? And I want to talk about this because I did a chart. I put it up on Facebook on Sunday night because I wanted to look at what was going on with Virginia, the chart of Virginia, with Ralph Northam, and this whole idea of this gun rally, because there were some troubling aspects to it, and I think that one of the things that people have been doing is looking at what could potentially go wrong or go down in an environment, in a situation like that. And we had the senator from Virginia talking about how that she felt that it could become a trap, or that there would be some heinous crime committed by Ralph Northam and his anti-gun thugs. and there were insiders that were talking about the barricades inside the Capitol, and I even looked at the chart and I thought, well, there could be some sketchy energy around this. So what happened, in my opinion, and I think that this is one of the positive aspects about being dialed in on certain events and calling out, or at the very least, beginning to question whether or not an event will have some kind of hacking involved by third parties, right? That by paying attention to it, we can actually change the outcome of the event. And some people think that Heisenberg is full of shit. I tend to think Heisenberg was onto something. You know, when the observer influences the experiment, right? So it's very hard to get a true experiment because there's really no such thing as true objectivity. It's very hard to be very objective. And then what happens is we have this dynamic between the particle and the wave, and sometimes you're a particle and sometimes you're a wave. It's all part of the uncertainty principle, which is what Heisenberg talks about. Anyway, it feels to me like that when we put our attention on something like that and want to safeguard it, or at the very least kind of walk the psychic perimeter, which is I think what a lot of people were doing, it actually changes changes the narrative, it changes the vibrational structure of the event. And thank God nothing happened yesterday. And in fact, what did take place, because remember now, this is on the first day of Aquarius. This is on the first day of Aquarius, which is the 20th of January. So this gun rights rally took place in and around Richmond, Virginia. And it was not only peaceful, but I followed some of the, what was interesting is YouTube did not allow people to live stream. YouTube was shutting down live streams from the event. Now, I think some people might have gotten a few off because there's probably a lot of live streaming trying to take place. But by and large, that's what they did. Now, some of the video that was captured was put up on Twitter and other services and individual websites. But what I saw was an incredibly diverse group of people, and people coming from kind of all backgrounds, all stripes, all shapes, various colors, right? And there was like, there is this group there called Black Guns Matter. And it was a group of like, American black gun owners. And they were there, and and it was like, it was incredible in a lot of ways. It's so, see, this gets into the spirit of paradox, which is what Aquarius is really about. Aquarius, I think, is the most paradoxical sign in a lot of ways. Like Aquarians really want to be an individual, and yet they also want to have this idea that they're part of something much greater than themselves. And at the same time, they also want to kind of stand out. It's a very interesting dynamic. I love Aquarians. I think they're fascinating. And a lot of my friends are Aquarians because they're very smart people. And you can have really great conversations with Aquarians. But every Aquarian has they've got their kind of, core issues, right? When I say core issues, I'm not talking about their core issues as people, but issues in the world that they kind of wrap their arms around and say, this is mine. And if you, and if you cross that line, you'll see the not so democratic side of the Aquarian, which is fine, it's okay. But it's interesting to work with them in their paradoxical environment. And what we saw yesterday was a paradox of an event. I went to this, I did a talk on Saturday at the Austin Astrological Association, and it's a really good group, and it's growing. So if you're in Austin and you are interested in astrology, you should check these people out. Shannon runs it, and I'm having a morning moment now. Anyway, check out Austin Astrological Society, and it's a really cool thing. Anyway, I gave a talk there on Saturday, and it was a prediction panel, and it was very interesting. It was me and two other astrologers, including Shannon. And one of the things that came up was this, this idea of the new age and how we're moving into this period, which is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the sign of Aquarius, which will take place in December. So that conjunction is at 0 degrees Aquarius. And then yesterday we had the sun in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So we're linking the two events together, right? So we can make a case that by what happened yesterday at 0 Aquarius could be a preface or presage to what we can expect with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. So one of the things that came up with this panel is this idea of the age of Aquarius. And one of the ideas that was brought up was kind of, how do I say it, more traditional, right? That it would be kind of wide open and very fluid and very transgendery and very, non-binary, sexy and it's like that was sort of the vision of the age of Aquarius that was tabled. And what's interesting is that yesterday what we saw was something quite different. And to me, it really speaks to the true nature of the true age of Aquarius, which is people, individuals gathered together with their own very strong, independent, individual points of view. Like the individual is not sacrificed on the altar of the group. And what happened in Richmond yesterday was very peaceful. You saw people patrolling themselves, policing themselves. There's a story of this guy who, sort of started to speak out and kind of get people agitated, and immediately the group turned on him. There was almost like antibodies descending on this virus that had kind of popped up in their group. And they shut this guy down. Now, everybody's got a right to free speech, but these are people that are there with an intention, and their intention was to show that they are not, radical terrorists, radical white terrorists, KKK, Nazi fascists, because that's a message that's going to continue to be pounded into our heads. And when you see a group like Black Guns Matter, which I loved it, it was great. When you see a group like that, you begin to realize that this this of self-policing and taking care of ourselves and taking care of our families and our own interests, and that it's not just this gun that represents the ability to stave off the impending threat of the UN troops or whatever. But there's a whole mindset that goes along with this. And the mindset is about taking care of one's property, right? Because essentially that's what the clarion call is. It's this thing. Somebody comes into your home and you happen to have a firearm. Well, guess what? You're taking care of yourself. You're taking care of your family. You're taking care of your property. I mean, that's how this works, right? So there's a mindset that goes along with it. It's like you're not allowing somebody else to take care of this thing for you, which is an antithesis to the socialistic or the communistic or the communitarian mindset, the sort of the virus, the mind virus that's descending upon not just the United States, but to a large extent, a lot of the world, right? So it's really interesting to see that an event like this, which on the surface, one would say, well, this is not very new agey, right? It's a bunch of old boomers and gun nuts and all these people who really should have their weapons taken away from them and put into one of Kyle Urich's. Oh, look who's here. Getting a little bit late start in the day, but I have to make space for who, or else he's gonna destroy Tokyo. It's Jasper Zilla. Yes, Jasper. Yes. There we go. Who would have thought that would be what the new age might look like? I really think it's an important thing to kind of wrap your head around, because it's not typical in that sense. And yet this very diverse group who is into policing themselves, into taking care of their own experience, this is kind of what it's about, boys and girls. You know, it's not always sexy Rexy. It's not always like, you know, we're all going to be endowed with group and telepathic powers. And I mean, I'm a believer in that stuff, right? But, you know, if you have those things, you've got to be pretty clear to be able to use that, to be able to tap into them. But I think that this is a really good start, very, very good start, and a very paradoxical start as well. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Self-consciousness, accountability to God, 10 Commandments America founded on. Let's see, what else? Oh, Rosie getting props. Hi all, been here a bit, just didn't acknowledge it. Hi Tamara. The psychic sidekick Jasper. Yes, here he is. There he is. Jasper's an attention whore. Look at him. He knows. He knows what's going on. All right, what else we got in the chat? Let's see. Get a lot of props for the show with Emily. Good. Love Emily. She's fantastic. Very fantastic. What else do we have? What else do we have in here? Let's see. Oh, Michael's in the chat. Hi, Michael. Same thing happening in chat rooms. Healthy boundaries are being established. Disruption is not allowed. We're learning. I mean, isn't that really it's a good sign, isn't it? It's like we're evolving. I mean, it's important to pay attention to that we are evolving. We're not just sitting around with our thumbs up our ass, you know, waiting for the man to come in and save the day. You know, that's not, you know, people, and I just want to commend the people that, you know, and I was leery, I got to be honest with you, I was leery, and, you know, and I looked at some of the aspects and I was like, man, this could go really sideways, really sideways. But I think enough people were paying attention to what was going on and what could happen, that, you know, the people that wanted to turn this thing or steer this thing in a certain direction, they realized that it was probably not going to be in their best interest to do that, because there were enough people with enough conscious awareness that were going to be there, or we're talking about it, that they could have their shit show exposed. So speaking of shit show exposed, Schiff show, the Adam Schiff show, couple of things that came up here that I wanted to bring up. First thing is, you guys need to be aware of the coronavirus. Just going to put it on your radar a little bit here, because it got on my radar. It seems that more and more people are now dealing with this thing. So travelers from China are being screened at US airports for a mysterious new virus that's killed 2 and sickened dozens. So we have high screening levels. Your health is essential. It's really important. You got to stay in line with your health. Also, and this is starting to come up a little bit now. It's starting to kind of ping on my radar. People have to be aware of sepsis. And I don't know if sepsis is related to this thing. I'm not going to link the two together. But a good friend of mine just had somebody die because they had sepsis, which is essentially, you know, blood poisoning. And it's one of these things that is deadlier than cancer. Like, you get it, you could be gone quickly. Hold on. Oh, excuse me. But let's focus on this for now. This is from Business Insider. Passengers from China arriving in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York will be screened by the CDC and Prevention and Control, that's the CDC, for a mysterious new virus that's killed 2 and sickened dozens in China. The virus, which is similar to SARS and causes pneumonia-like symptoms. So remember that, pneumonia-like symptoms, which also appear to be very related to sepsis. Like, sepsis comes on like you've got the worst flu ever, and you're aching, and you just, but it's like a flu times, times 100, right? So, and again, I don't want to confuse the two, but they both have very similar inceptions, right? Most of the patients are thought to have contracted the virus from animals, but person-to-person transmission appears possible, albeit less common. So this gets back into what's going on with China and their pork, because their pigs have been dying and have been displaying these viral or virus-like conditions, really bad. And I think a lot of their pigs have probably been processed without them actually being able to determine whether or not they're carrying, most likely, this virus. So of course they're starting to import and have been much more American pork. The federal health officials said on Friday that they would begin screening passengers arriving at 3 U.S. airports from Wuhan, China, for signs of infection from mysterious, potentially deadly virus. This is why it's so important to keep your immunity up. It is so important to stay as healthy as you possibly can. And that means that you have a really good understanding of your diet and what works for you, and activity, and proper supplementation, because we don't want to drop down a certain level of vibration. When we do, we become much more susceptible to these viruses and bacteria. The screenings at 3 airports, which receive most of the travelers from Wuhan to the U.S. on direct and connecting flights, will start on Friday evening and Saturday morning. CDC officials will look for symptoms such as coughing, difficulty breathing, and will check passengers' temperatures using an infrared thermometer. Like, they don't even have to now stick a mercury thermometer in your mouth, right? They just hit you with an infrared scan and get your, it's like, welcome to the medical new age. The new virus, called 2019 nCoV by the CDC, is a coronavirus, the type of virus behind severe acute respiratory system, or SARS. 2019 nCoV, which causes flu-like and pneumonia-like symptoms, was first observed last year. The virus has killed 2 people and sickened dozens in China. 2 cases have also been reported in Thailand and 1 in Japan, both linked to travelers from Wuhan. Investigations into this novel coronavirus are ongoing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More than 60,000 people arrived in the U.S. from Wuhan, the city about 700 miles south of Beijing, in 2019. So just get that on your radar, and you might hear more about it, unless, of course, if it gets really bad, in which case you'll hear less about it, no doubt. But the moral of the story here is stay healthy, stay on top of your game, and do your best to keep your immunity levels very high. And again, the sepsis thing, you just need to pay attention. You need to pay attention, because if you have super flu-like symptoms, like really bad, like worse than you've got to call, or you've got to get to a doctor, because if you do have sepsis, and this is quite serious, if you do have sepsis, like every hour like you wait can hasten your mortality. Like, it's that serious, right? It happens that quickly. So if you can get to a medical professional within 6 hours of coming down with these symptoms, you've got a chance of having your blood treated with super antibiotics, which I know they're not great, but what are you going to do if you have blood poisoning? I think homeopathic remedies are not really going to work during that time. So just remember that. File that away, because again, a good friend of mine, one of her best people in her life, ran into this sepsis thing and was in good health, and all of a sudden it hit, and then the next thing you know, he's in the hospital 21 days, and then he's gone. And I also think that we have to watch out for something that looks like something, but it also can be something else, like the coronavirus, perhaps masquerading as sepsis. I'm just going to put that out there. But of course, you know, be your own lone ranger when it comes to your body. So we got the impeachment trial coming up, and it should be quick work based upon theoretically what Mitch McConnell is proposing. If you don't know what the terms of engagement are, rules of engagement, let me share them with you. The Democrats are not going to have a whole lot of time to present their case. I'm going to read this here. This is from NBC News. McConnell lays out Trump's rules for Trump's Senate trial, allowing for vote on witnesses and documents. All right, so like, what a sad group of people these are. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican, Kentucky, will allot each side a total of 24 hours. That's it, man. You get 24 hours to present your arguments in President Donald Trump's impeachment trial, but the time must be confined to 2 working days, according to text of his organizing resolution. Like, you can't spread the 24 hours out. Like, we're going to take 3 hours today and 3 hours tomorrow, and 8 days from now, we're going to have 24 hours. It's got to be 2 working days. The proposal also suggests that none of the evidence collected as part of the House's impeachment inquiry will be admitted automatically. So they're going to have to submit that stuff. And submitting the evidence takes time, right? It's not like, because if the Democrats could fast track all the evidence they submitted, then now that 24-hour period is going to be what? Truncated. Like, they could get up to speed very quickly. But if they have to resubmit their evidence, then it's going to take much longer. So arguments will begin Wednesday at 1 p.m., according to the rules McConnell laid out, setting up several long days for Senate jurors. Democrats protested that the rules would push arguments to late hours and make it harder to introduce evidence, although the rules do allow a vote on whether witnesses will be called to testify. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, I've got a story on him too that I want to bring up. Democrat in New York said McConnell's rules depart dramatically from the precedent set during President Bill Clinton's impeachment trial in 1999 in ways that are designed to prevent the Senate and the American people from learning the full truth about President Trump's actions that warranted his impeachment. Oh, like all the full truth bullshit that they brought to the table during their dog and pony show, their monkey trial. The 4-page organizing resolution, which the Senate is expected to adopt Tuesday, lays out the initial parameters of the trial. The first 2 pages indicate that evidence collected by the House won't automatically be admitted for the trial. Instead, it says Senate would have to hold a vote later, sometime after the initial stage of the trial, for materials to be admitted. Under the resolution, House impeachment managers prosecuting the case against Trump would deliver their arguments first, with the challenge of compressing weeks of testimony and hundreds of pages of evidence into the course of 24 hours. Look at McConnell. He's a smiley motherfucker, isn't he? He's like, Mr. Fish McConnell. Yes. Well, look, they jerry-rigged, their monkey trial. Are you going to get up now? Have you had enough of me? Are you ready? Are you ready? Did you get your dose, your daily dose of attention and love and marking your territory, showing me that this is your show and not mine? Can you go to the back of the computer? Thank you. All right. The Senate would then hold a vote on whether to move forward with witnesses or documents. Democrats need the support of 4 Senate Republicans who control the chamber to make it to that stage. So this is not, they could draw this out, right? They could draw this out longer. But the idea here is to compress everything so that the Democrats can limit their artillery that they bring to the table. The resolution makes it clear that if witnesses and documents are approved, the witnesses must first be deposed, and the Senate shall decide after deposition which witnesses shall testify. Trump has added 2 new attorneys to his defense. One is, of course, Alan Dershowitz, who seems to be the holder of the Jeffrey Epstein keys with the file that he has called insurance. Apparently Dershowitz has all the video. He's got all the pertinent video for what happened on Epstein Island. and which basically gives him a bulletproof vest for this lifetime. You'll never see Alan Dershowitz do any hard time or anything related to that. And then Kenneth Starr is now part of Trump's defense. Not a huge fan. Not a huge fan. I think that they basically bungled the Clinton. The whole idea with Clinton was to go back into the Rose Law Firm and to dissect what happened with the Rose Law Firm. Now, Brett Kavanaugh was actually defending. Brett Kavanaugh was involved in that trial, right? He was involved in sort of defaming Vince Foster, because the Vince Foster murder was a big part of this skeleton key of evidence for the impeachment against Clinton and the Rose Law Firm, because Vince Foster shows up dead in a park. And Vince Foster was one of the lawyers for the Rose Law Firm. He knew where all the bodies were buried. And all of a sudden, one day he shows up dead in a park. And what's interesting about that, there were kind of two narratives involved. And one of them was actually promulgated and spread by Brett Kavanaugh, and that's Vince Foster was gay, queer, right? And he went out to this park so that he could, score and hit on some tasty rough trade. And as a result of that, it got too rough and he got killed. So he was spreading this rumor. He was defaming Vince Foster. The other rumor, which might have a little bit more traction, perhaps, is the rumor that he was Hillary Clinton's lover, and that he knew too much because of literally his penetration into the Clinton family, into the Clinton crime syndicate. And that's also an interesting, how do I say it? An interesting herring, because that might suggest that it was a crime of passion, right? But perhaps not. Perhaps it might have been the fact that Vince Foster and Hillary Clinton actually might have been lovers. But what we know about Hillary Clinton is that she prefers the Huma Abedin side of things a bit more than the Vince Foster side of things. But hey, maybe she hits from both sides of the plate. Anyway, that was really the basis for this trial, the impeachment trial, and then it gets into shit like Monica Lewinsky, and that he lied to he lied to the Senate. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And of course, we got the devil in the blue dress and the stain and all that, and and of course he's caught lying. And that's it. I mean, that's what he was impeached for. And all that stuff, everything that they worked on to compile evidence against the Rose Law Firm, it didn't mean anything at the end of the day. It meant nothing at all. And it dragged on and on and on and on and on. And again, if I was a Democrat during that time, I would have been pissed. I would have been pissed. And if I was, and I was like, what is this bullshit? I was not really that into it. But if I was also a Republican or somebody who kind of knew what was going on with the Clintons, which I did, because I was very into that Waco video, the rules of engagement, trying to pull the whole Clinton crime family apart in my own way. But I had other things going on. It wasn't like that was the focus of my crusade during that time. But again, I'd be pissed too, because they went in for one thing and they came out with another thing. And the big problem here with that trial is that if you really got into the Clintons and what they were doing in Arkansas, it's going to lead right to Iran-Contra. It's going to lead into those planes that Webster Hubble and his father were building, and how they were flying out of Mena, Arkansas, and bringing guns down into South America, into Nicaragua, into Panama, and bringing back huge amounts of cocaine. It would have indicted the Bush family. So people like Brett Kavanaugh, who had deep ties and still does to this day to the Bush family, they were there to monkey wrench the whole thing. So it's a very, very different trial and very different obfuscation and very different outcome. It's like apples and oranges. I don't think Chuck Schumer, he may want to try to compare the two, but they're not even close. Not even close. So Chuck Schumer is somebody I wanted to bring up because I found something that is quite interesting. Now, again, I'm bringing this up in the spirit of hypocrisy and the spirit that as a country, we're divided. And we're not just divided between the right and the left and the black and the white and the men and the women and the old and the young. I mean, of course, these are classic canards to divide and conquer us as a society and people. However, we are also divided in the sense that our government is occupied by dual citizens. That means that there are people who are in the Congress and in Senate and in positions of support. And I'll give you an example. The guy who was the controller, the comptroller, and the head accountant of the Pentagon back during the pre-9/11 days was a guy by the name of Dov Zakheim. And as soon as 9/11 happened, Dov Zakheim left the United States and he went to Israel, which I believe he is still there today. And along with the disappearance of Dov Zakheim was also the disappearance of billions of dollars from the Pentagon. Now, why did that? Donald Rumsfeld talks about this. Why did that money go away and where did it go? Well, if you follow the money, it's more than likely that that was the money that paid for 9/11. Okay, a lot of expenses involved in 9/11. So I'd say 7 billion plus, and of course there's all that insurance money that Larry Silverstein also got for those two decrepit towers, those two decrepit asbestos-filled towers that they were able to take down in controlled demolition. Got a lot of money from that. Do you think that Larry Silverstein held on to that money? That's all his? No, he's just a point person. Once that money came through, he was there to distribute that money. So, I mean, 9/11 was huge in terms of disaster capitalism in a lot of ways, unfortunately. And there were people that died in 9/11. It was not like nobody died. Trust me, there were people that died. I know people that died in 9/11 and lost people, right? So anyway, he was a dual citizen. I'm sorry, that's just the way it goes. I'm not telling you a fiction. I'm not. And again, please understand that if he was a dual citizen of Indonesia or China or Poland or Djibouti, we'd be talking about his relationship with those countries as well. Then this goes all the way through the Congress and the Senate and people that are, again, Dov Zakheim is not an elected official, but he was a dual citizen. And I don't believe dual citizens should be allowed to be elected in this country. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't care what country they're from. I don't want somebody who is who has England's interest at heart, although that's probably more often the case in some ways. Or I don't want somebody who's got Moldavia's interest. I just let's come on. We really want to speak to this idea of sovereignty as a nation, that we have people that are vested in that and they serve one Lord, one ruler. You can't serve two gods, right? You can't serve two kings. So let's just focus on the one. That's my 2 cents. Okay. That's not to get it out there. It has nothing to do with hatred of a people or country. It's like, let's just get clear and make the system sort of what it was intended to be, governed by and for the people of this country and not other countries. Okay, I think I made my point pretty clear. So I'm going to bring this in, which is a very interesting story. It's from the website Mondo Weiss. And this has to do with Chuck Schumer's very inconsistent positions. And this gets to the heart of this kind of duality and dual citizenship, which we're going to see more of with the True Note and Gemini. So pro-life, pro-Israel, Israeli anti-abortion organization reaches out for U.S. support to fight demographic war in the Jewish state. Now, this is critical because every culture theoretically has to continue to produce the next generation. If they don't produce the next generation, then the numbers will recede, and ultimately that culture, that group will perish, and other groups who are populating at a higher rate will eventually take over, right? Because it's just a numbers game. And Israel is no different. This is coming from the Jerusalem Post, Christian edition. Preventing abortions is the key to Israel's survival as a Jewish state. So now all of a sudden they're getting hip. Like, we can't make abortion such an easy out anymore, because when we do, what it does is it eliminates our potential to increase our numbers. Simple math. There are close to 50,000 abortions in Israel every year, many of which are due to economic concerns and can be prevented. The Crib Efrat organization saves the lives of over 3,000 children in Israel every year by providing financial and social support to pregnant women. So what's interesting here is that this is not a moral debate. Like, they're not saying we need to keep these kids around or save the kids or save the mothers because abortion is an abomination, it's murder. They're basically saying, hey, look, based on the survival of our culture and our community and our people, we need to have these kids. So it is a fundamental decision based on the preservation of their culture, their religion, their tribe, their group, their people. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference of distinction here. As we go to print, Israel's borders are in jeopardy. The Arab birth rate is about double the Jewish birth rate. General Uzi Dayan, speaking to the director for the Council of National Security, announced demographic projections forecasting an Arab majority in Israel by the year 2020, less than 15 years from now. Well, hey, we're knocking on the door now, aren't we? So this is from 2013, but it's important to look at this because Chuck Schumer was involved in supporting this group. Though Efrat only assists women in Israel, the group has garnered support from inside the Beltway through its American partner, Chuck Schumer, a noted pro-choice champion who has used the issue of abortion to secure his New York Senate, attended the 30th anniversary gala for Efrat. Schumer has been lauded by Planned Parenthood, who called him a hero with 100% pro-choice, pro-family planning voting record. But in 2007, Schumer put his pro-choice position aside and joined his anti-abortion foes at the celebration. And he's a typical politician. Republican leaders also praised the group. Thanks for representing in such a great way the saving of lives. Well, they're not really talking about the saving of lives, it's the preservation of their people in a lot of ways. So I brought this up because of this. It's not just, and again, this is an older story, but I brought it up because I wanted to talk about Schumer, that it's not just this idea of like dual citizenry, but it's also this bifurcation that Chuck Schumer could stand for one thing in this country and then stand for another thing in this other country. So in the United States, Schumer is basically kind of lauding a different, very different relationship with abortion, and one which can be seen as being genocidal in some ways, right? And in the United States, I believe the statistics bear out that most of the mothers who have abortions tend to be minorities, so-called minorities. So essentially what Chuck Schumer is advocating at its heart is kind of race-based in some ways, right? So it's like, okay, well, we can eliminate these people. It's okay to keep this birth rate down, but over here, well, we need to support this because this group, this community, this nation state needs to continue to survive and thrive into the future, and it's completely and utterly disingenuous, right? So we're going to see more of this when the true nodes move into Gemini. We're going to see how people and their alliances and their allegiances are split. And that South Node in Sagittarius is about, well, where's the truth here, right? Because the truth is lacking in vitamin deficiency with the South Node in Sagittarius. And people's feet are going to be held to the fire a little bit. Like, what side are you on? Where are you? Where are you in this debate? So I just thought it would be, I thought it was interesting to bring this up because of this idea of these shifting alliances. And a person can look one way or appear one way over here, and over here they've got a completely and alternate point of view, which, you know, theoretically undercuts their point of view over here. But they're politicians. Did you see that this interview, or was I think it was Elizabeth Warren, and she's being asked a question at a town hall meeting, or was it by, it was a moderator. It was a moderator at one of the meetings. I just heard the soundbite, and I just, what it was, one of those things was passing, and the person asked, "Is it okay for politicians to lie?" It's a really interesting question. Is it okay for politicians? And she stumbled and tripped over that. It was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. And it was a simple yes or no question. But she can't say no. She can't say no because she was caught in a lie. She was caught in a lie. She cannot say no. No, it's not important to lie. No, it's important that politicians don't lie, right? She can't, she can't go there. So what she did is she, did the circular dance, right? She did the circular rain dance, and there you go. That's going to start to come out more, right? That the Gemini piece is going to be interesting because people are going to be asking lots of questions. And a lot of different information is going to be tabled. A lot. Trust me. So we're going to see some of this in action. And with the back end of Sagittarius, it is fueled in some ways by this desire to get the truth out, or have the truth be resurrected in facts, in information, versus hardcore dogma and overarching theories and speculation. All right, let me check in with you guys in the chat. Let's see where you're at. What do we got here? What's going on? Soy has dropped birth rate. Thank you, Diana Chris. We got with Michael here. Let's see. Soy is GMO'd and glyphosate. Liz Moore is speaking about not having a leader who lies to us. It was laughable. Every leader we have has lied to us. I think Trump lies less than others. Yes, I would agree. But Trump has been known to push the bounds of credulity, right? Mercury, Neptune square. Speaking of a couple of interesting developments. Apparently, the border crossing rate, if you can believe it, in Arizona is down by about 97%. Trump apparently has basically said to people who are awaiting asylum that they can't wait in the U.S., so they've been shipped back to Mexico. And apparently he's cut a deal with Mexico where the asylum seekers have to go to, they're not supporting these, Mexico apparently is like shutting down their southern border now. So something is interesting. Something interesting is going on behind the scenes with immigration. And you notice that the left, the left has their Alinsky-like, actions. And so they went in all in on the immigration piece, and they sent AOC down there, and they're moving babies around and snatching babies and all that, separating children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You notice how that's gone now? They're not doing that anymore. It's like all of a sudden they're on to the next thing because they can't spend too much time actually devoting their energy to one thing. Because they know that if they do that, eventually they'll burn their people out. Because if something doesn't happen, if something doesn't change, then all of a sudden they look like losers. So they move on to the next thing before they can be discredited. And they keep the, it's always change. It's change, perpetual change, right? But apparently, and I have to check this, but I heard this over the weekend, that what's going on in Arizona is a drastically less sort of flow of immigration into the U.S. Here in Texas, apparently now states can stop taking immigrants. Trump has allowed the states, hey, here you go. You can say, hey, I don't want to take immigrants anymore. In most states, governors, oh, we'll take more. Not Texas. Texas has said, we're gonna pump the brakes on this for now. And so there's kind of a bit of a sea change beginning to happen. I'm not sure it's going to happen right away. And again, I think people have to have their issues in their countries addressed. So if there's poverty in places like Nicaragua or Guatemala or Belize, it behooves the multinational corporations who basically snatched our fucking jobs and moved them overseas to maybe lend a hand in those places. So perhaps maybe those people might have a livable wage and a livable life instead of being thrown into deep cycles of poverty. It might be helpful. The other thing that I noticed or heard about over the weekend is I started to watch this very funny channel called the Rural Farm channel. It's called RFD, and it's all about it's geared towards farmers. And it has entertainment that's geared towards kind of the farmer mindset, like reruns of Hee Haw and the Porter Wagner Show, and sort of those types of Americana. But it also has a lot of news reports and insights into agriculture and agribusiness. If you have this channel on your cable provider, I advise you to check it out. Not for the Hee Haw and Porter Wagner stuff, which I think is kind of interesting in some ways, but because of what you can learn from what's happening with America's farmers. So two things crossed my radar based on what I was able to glean through their news reports and their whatchamacallit, stories that they're focusing on. And one of the things that they're talking about is they're looking at atrazine, which is, of course, a major toxin and used to eradicate pests and weeds. And it's been shown to, basically, do sex changes with frogs, right? I mean, atrazine, really fucks with the hormones, but, things move slowly into the middle of the country, and they move slowly with the agricultural kind of mindset. But now they're starting to ask this question, is atrazine safe? Well, it's about fucking time you're asking the question. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing a younger group of farmers begin to emerge, and their concerns are quite different than their forefathers, who just would buy into whatever big agro was selling them. So at least they're having the debate. At least they're talking about it instead of just summarily accepting it. And then I saw another report on how the state of Georgia and the University of Georgia are helping promote farmers to also keep bees and to create aviaries. And of course, the bees are being killed off because of the neonicotinoids, which are, again, being used in the eradication of pests and weeds, which interfere in the massive monocrop process. So they're trying to replenish the bee community now, because they understand that their livelihood in a lot of ways is connected to the chain of life. So if they can, and this was on this news network, right, which is speaking directly to farmers, big farmers. They're tuning into this network because this is where they're going to get they get the futures report and stuff that you and I just don't see because it's not our business at all. But it's really good because these ideas of sustainability and being able to find alternatives to this really dangerous chemical, atrazine, and trying to find ways to keep the pollinators alive, are beginning to seep into that community finally after a long period of time. So when I see stuff like that, it gives me hope, because that is the basic fundamental foundation of everything: how we grow our food, who grows our food, and what goes into growing and processing and distributing said food. So, have hope. You bring some hope into your life, that even when we have these titanic monolithic structures who say this is how you're supposed to grow your crops, or this is how you're supposed to inject your children, that they are also on their heels a bit. And they're on their heels because people are waking up. They're waking up to the fact that if you go back and connecting it to the very beginning of this program, that people can self-police, that people can self-govern, that people do know what to do with their bodies. They do know what to do with their lives. They do know what to do with their children. They do know what to do with their property. They do know what to do with their firearms. And that the nanny state combined with the corporocratic state, which is the left hand and the right hand, are not the vox populi. They're not the voice of the people. They're not the rule of this entity, right? So take heart. People are waking up. They're waking up, and it is a ripple effect. And you're all part of the awakening. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget you're a part of the awakening. And we are going to be moving into a technological and ideological war for our bodies and our minds and our spirits. And what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to do a series on the post-human. I'm going to do it here on 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm going to start to look at what we're up against in terms of their idea for a brave new world. A brave new world. And I've been collecting some data and some information that I want to put together so we can have a more informed discussion. And what I'm going to share with you is very troubling. It's very, very troubling, as their idea about how the quote unquote human species is going to evolve and is being promoted to evolve in a certain way. So stay tuned. That's going to be part of the next few days. All right, let me check in with you guys, see what's happening. Let's see. Agribusiness is positive. China is so screwed in terms of food production. Try to stay away from Chinese agro products here in Korea. What else do we have in chat? Plant native plants. Yeah, what is RFD channel? RFD channel is a cable channel that is dedicated to basically the rural and farm communities. So it supports. It's kind of corny in some ways, but it's also like if this is how I think of that channel. If major media kind of went away and people had to kind of bootstrap media, that's what it would look like. That would be kind of folksy. I mean, one version of it would be, not all of it would be. It'd be kind of folksy and sort of, looking at looking at people, their relationship with the land, how they grow, their products, their hobbies. Like there's this one show on there where these people travel around Texas. They've been doing this for a long time. And they did this story about this guy who collects bones, all these different various bones. And he takes the bones and he makes sculptures out of the various bones. It's kind of, he's a bone collector, lives in Texas. And they did another segment on typewriter rodeos. And these people that are poets, they use these standard typewriters. And they have these kind of like poetry rodeos, and people come up and they do these poems for them for free. It's like, I mean, it's local sort of special interest stuff, and you'll see it, but it's it's national. It's across the country. But what they're really catering to is they're catering to people that live in rural and farming communities based on their content, and there's a mindset that kind of goes along with. So they're providing entertainment. It's not entertainment a lot of other people would be into, like reruns. I found that the reruns of the Porter Wagner show to be very, very interesting. If you want to catch a slice of Americana, and by the way, Porter Wagner is the ultimate Leo. If you look at, like, you know, the hair, the big pompadour hair, or a pompadour hair, and then the nudie suits, the rhinestone cowboy stuff. I mean, he's a total Leo, right? So from an astrological perspective, it's kind of interesting. But that's how the network. That's why that's the kind of the gestalt of the network, right? They're going to give people nostalgic entertainment because to be honest, that kind of program is just not being created for those people anymore, unless you watch the Hallmark Channel or the Discovery Channel, right? Which are kind of, again, the right hand, the left hand. The Hallmark is the feminine side. Discovery Channel is kind of the masculine side of the more traditional sort of role modeling. Discovery, you got guys going for gold, and the moonshiners and the hot rods, and then the Hallmark Channel is for the gals and romance stories and marriage and relationships and families. So that's still kind of out there, but they're going back to a completely different time. It's interesting. Like, I wouldn't want a steady diet of the rural farm directory network. I wouldn't want it, but looking into it and seeing what's going on from the perspective of the farmers and their rural communities, quite interesting. And they're going through changes, just like we're all going through changes, because we're waking up, wising up, and rejecting these really top-down values, which ultimately have been cul-de-sacs and dead-end stories. And that's why there's such a hardcore push to deplatform, to take people's ability to fund their accounts and fund their messages, and because these people that are controlling these corporocratic entities don't want other voices competing with theirs, because it's bad for their business. That's really what it's about. It's bad for their business. It's not necessarily about casting us as being hateful or casting people who are really clamoring for the truth. It's not about that. That's a cover story. It's just bad for business, because if people learn how to do things on their own, if people garden on their own, if people take care of their bodies, eat the right foods, reject the chemicals that are being essentially forced on us, then guess what? It hits their bottom line. It hits their bottom line. And they don't want that. So they're protecting their interests, and they don't want competing voices in their realm. It's just the way it is. It's not about safety. It's not about protecting us. It's really about protecting their own interests. So yesterday there was a very empowering event. First day of Aquarius. People of all stripes, all colors had one thing in common: to show up and assemble peacefully, and to let the state of Virginia and the rest of the United States and the world, to put them on notice that, we're here and we're going to support one another. This is a very powerful message, and it's going to be moving forward with increasing vibrancy and increasing momentum. So don't forget that. You're all part of it. Let me check in one final time. Let's see where we're at. Let's see. Such a smart group. Such a really, really smart group. What else do we have here? There was something about elderberry. Let's see. Farmers, ranchers allowed to be concerned about chemical toxicity in fertilizer and animal vaccines. I have rancher relatives. I think that's changing a little bit. It's changing. It's starting to. I mean, what I saw on that network, I think the dialogue is changing a bit. What else do we have? It erodes their agenda. Porter had Dolly, so you had to keep up. Dolly she was quite a talent, right? She was quite a talent. Unfortunately, there's this story with Nashville being sort of the nest of kind of an MK Ultra hive. If you read Kathy O'Brien, Nashville plays a huge role And she talks about how the Mandrell sisters were MK Ultra controlled, and that her controller was a country music clown. He was a magician clown in the country music circuit, and he was her controller. They, you know, they didn't. I don't think they really had sex. He was there to just kind of keep her in line in a lot of ways. So there is that dark side to the Nashville story and the Branson story as well. What's interesting about Porter Wagner is that he brought James Brown to the Grand Ole Opry. Could you fucking imagine that? Can you imagine being in Nashville and all of a sudden James Brown is going to be there and perform there? I actually think it's kind of a brilliant idea. And there was such a brouhaha about that. It was, they didn't like, it wasn't because, I mean, let's just, you know, I'm sure some people are inherently racist. They didn't want some guy with a different color up there. But Nashville accepted people like Charlie Pride and Ray Charles. You know, they liked those dudes because they sang country music. You know, Ray Charles had a country phase. You know, it's like they embraced those guys. So it was more about the genre than it was about, in some ways, James Brown's color. I mean, you know, there was a big, again, they brought the Byrds in who, you know, did Rodeo Sweethearts. And that was their kind of country album. They thought, oh, well, let's bring them into Grand Ole Opry. And they're like, whoa, hold on a second. These people have drums. You know, it's like, we don't do drums. You know, we do banjos and guitars and fiddles. We don't do no drums. So it was more of a kind of a genre and culture-based theme versus in some ways a kind of a, I can't believe that Joni Mitchell fucking played the Grand Ole Opry. And she was like in her kind of Mingus phase. Like, there's like, that must have been weird. If you're in the Grand Ole Opry and you're watching, you know, Jaco Pastorius and open bass tunings, like they're like, what just happened here? But credit Porter Wagner for wanting to bring James Brown to Nashville. Good on him. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you for being part of today's show. Best chat in the internet. You guys are so smart. So with it, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to sip when it's possible. Starting tomorrow, I'll be looking at the future of humanity, the dark Aquarian age, and the inception of the post-human reality, also known as the PHR. All right, have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take good care.